Hello, my name is Chaplain Paul. This is for Mr. Kennedy. I'm making this video in the hopes that maybe he'll see it someday. A little bit about myself. I've been a healthcare activist for over 25 years. I have been a, I'm classified as a Christian community chaplain. I serve in Arizona long-term care for over 15 years, all voluntary, all at my own risk, all at my own cost. During COVID, millions of patients were locked away in isolation like animals, denied their civil rights, patients' rights, human rights, and constitutional rights to have someone who loves them be by their side to protect and love them. Why is this so important? Because of the neglect, abuse, and mistreatment in these facilities is rampant. And if you don't have family or friends or even clergy going in there to ensure the safety and quality care of the patients, then it's a free for all. And it is a living hell on wheels. I've witnessed atrocities that would make even the most hardened hearted SOB bring them to tears. Patients waiting all night long to be changed, patients developing E. coli, MRSA, bed sores, rashes, infections, bloody blisters, and other very serious complications that landed them in ICU and straight in the grave. And these were people that I loved that were treated that way. I don't know if you know what it's like to lose loved ones. All right, so I'm not even going to go there. Uh, the thing is, you're a trial attorney. Our health services, there needs to be a lawsuit brought against uh, the health department, which is Arizona Health Services. The Audit General of the state of Arizona conducted an audit in 2002 because our health services were allocated $1.5 million to hire more surveyors to go into these facilities, and they didn't do it. And that triggered an audit. In that audit, it was uncovered that there were hundreds and hundreds of very serious uh, complaints of sexual and physical abuse that were downgraded, dismissed without any investigation. Hundreds and hundreds. Facilities with hundreds of complaints, and they weren't closed down. And this was uncovered, and I will put the links below, and you could read her audit. In that audit, there's a recommendation that our legislature is to create a task force to go into these facilities on a regular basis, uh, create a task force to hold our health services accountable. All right. And here it is 2 years later, hasn't been implemented yet. They're not even talking about it. During COVID, millions of patients died all alone in isolation, denied their civil rights under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, denied their constitutional rights under the Ninth Amendment, denied their patient rights under Title 36 here in Arizona, and denied their human rights under the Nuremberg Code, which is an international code of ethics that all nations are to adhere to. Patients were force vaxxed against their will, against their knowledge, and a whole list of other atrocities occurred during COVID. Their argument is we have to protect the patients from the virus. Who's going to protect the patients from abusive staff if you lock them away in isolation and deny them the very thing they need to have a fighting chance for survival? Love and compassion, encouragement, and the hands-on help they need that the staff are too busy to give. It wreaks havoc on a patient's mental health, and it slows their ability to heal. It creates a negative on the process to heal when you're under that type of stress, being locked away. And you say, well, they have a roommate and the staff comes and goes. Yeah, the staff comes and goes, but they're not giving love to that patient. And the roommate might be coma, semi-coma, so that's it. And then, you have devices where they could do FaceTime, and that was very helpful during COVID. But a lot of the patients maybe not have access to those devices or have the mental capacity to operate them, or just are unable to because they're coma, semi-coma. And so what happened? Patients were loaded up on psych meds and antidepressants until they to oblivion. Many patients I died, many patients I loved died all alone in isolation. And I begged health services, the Arizona Long-Term Care Licensing Department, which is a division of health services. That's where the surveyors go in and run their investigation. I begged Adult Protective Services. I begged the Arizona Ombudsman. I begged our elected officials. I begged the governor's office. I begged the attorney general's office. I begged the Civil Rights Division of the state of Arizona. I contacted the Justice Department, filed 3 complaints now, and what do I get back? We're not interested. We're not moving forward with an investigation at this time. Our rights were trampled on during COVID, and there's no accountability at all. None. So, lately I've been taking a step back because it's an election year, and I don't know who's going to be reelected or who's going to be elected in our state legislature. So I'm kind of taking a wait and look type of an attitude. Uh, but the situation is critical, and the thing is, the quality of care in these facilities is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. And there's really no state agencies. Everything's the minimum in Arizona. You get the minimum. And then when the minimum is just to a degree that creates absolute misery, there's nothing anybody can do about it. I contacted the director of health services, talked to her. That's Sunny, by the way. And she told me that their office doesn't respond to staffing shortages. Well, when you are supposed to have 2 CNAs on a floor with 30 patients, you have 2 wings, okay, primarily. So in the facilities where I go, you have basically 60 patients on a floor, let's say. You're to have 4 CNAs, 2 for each wing, and then if they need help, you got 4. It takes 2 CNAs to change a patient. Believe it or not, there's a lot of stuff involved, and it takes 2, especially if the patient is coma, semi-coma, and you're trying to change that patient. It takes 2. The RNs are very reluctant to help unless state is on site. So if you only have 2 CNAs on a floor with 60 patients, you got a recipe for disaster. Patients waiting hours to be changed. I'm telling you, 6, 7, 8 hours to be changed. That's inhumane. That is a violation of their civil rights, patients' rights, human rights, and constitutional rights to be treated humanely. And people are dying because of it. And nothing's happening. Our elected officials don't even talk about this, or they'll mention it here and there, but they don't have. There's no press conferences. Very rarely is there a press conference that talk about these issues. There is no joint legislative committee, uh, House and Senate, bipartisan long-term care. There are no long-term care caucuses. There is no long-term care task force to go into these facilities nights and weekends to make sure the patients are being cared for properly. There's nothing. There's no town hall meetings concerning these issues. And so it's just out of sight, out of mind, and let's just forget about it. Well, the fact of the matter is, we're next. At some point, someone, either we or someone we love, are going to be hitting them beds. And unless we're willing to get a sleeping bag and be in there 12, 15 hours a day to make sure our loved ones are cared for properly, then chances are they're going to be neglected, abused, and mistreated in some manner. The food, for instance, is mostly processed pig slop. It's just awful. Uh, the conditions are awful. The uh, treatment in many regards is awful. Now, there are a lot of good people that work in these facilities. I'm not saying they're not. And there are a lot of nice people that work in these facilities. I'm not saying there's not. And there's a lot of dedicated, hardworking healthcare employees that to try to do the best they can. I'm not saying there's not. But there's also very bad people in the mix. People that are there just for a job and they could care less. I've had patients I love uh, begging to be changed, and staff will come to the door. I'll be back in 15 minutes, only for the patient to wait another 2 hours to be changed. And it stings, it burns, it causes bed sores, it causes rashes, it can cause E. coli and MRSA and a whole list of other very serious complications that land you in ICU. And then straight in the grave. We're not talking about this. You said make America healthy again. Let's make America healthy again. Okay, we'll start with the children, like you're doing, and my hands off to you for doing that. The World Children's Health website that you have, it's good, and the thing you're doing with water keepers, that's good. River keepers or water keepers, that's very. I commend you for all of that, and taking the pharmaceutical companies and the government and corporate to court and winning over 500 cases. I commend you for that. But we're leaving out a critical point here. You don't just, you know, you have to go from the cradle to the grave. In other words, people get older and they're treated like animals. People get in accidents, and not all old people are in these facilities. There's people that get in accidents or develop disease, and you have young people that are in these facilities as well. People OD. I have patients that are young, 20, 30 years old, OD. Now they're coma, semi-coma. And their poor parents have to sit there day and night, because they're not being treated properly. To ensure that they're being treated properly, to ensure that if they're on a ventilator, that they get weaned off or they get the proper thing. Or why? Okay, why is it important to have family in there and clergy? Well, family prevents medical mistakes. Family makes sure medical wishes are being honored. Family makes sure that the staff is doing their job. Family brings in the comforts of home, like food and good, healthy food and other things that are comforting to the patient from home that you don't really think of when the patient goes into the facility, and then later go, well, maybe I found your stuffed animal when you're 10 years old, and you bring it to them, and it's very comforting. I bring stuffed animals to these facilities. I get them donated, and I bring them in to the facility. Why? Because it's comforting, and it makes them happy, and it lifts up their spirits, and it brings them joy. And getting back to COVID, I fought day and night to reopen them doors. Why is it important to have clergy? It's important to have clergy because the devil attacks a patient's mind, wreaks havoc, and a good seasoned Christian pastor or chaplain can sit there and listen to their concerns, pray with them, talk to them, and give them the hope and skills they need in order to get a grip and get back to a better level playing field, so they're more at peace in their environment, and to share the word of God and to give them hope through our testimonies, so they don't just fall into despair, suicidal thoughts, and just shut down like a stone. I've seen patients, they shut down all day long. They're like this, sitting in the wheelchair all day. And then Chaplain Paul walks in and gives them a stuffed animal, and they lift up their head, and the light goes back on, and they're filled with joy because they can't believe it's like it's like a flower in the desert being deprived of water for months, and someone comes along and pours a cool cup of water on that little flower, and it all of a sudden comes back to life. That's exactly what these patients, when we give them love and attention and encouragement and show them the love of Christ, they come back to life. Otherwise, they die spiritually, physically, emotionally. They die. They waste away and die. The human condition needs love. We need that love. This can never happen again, locking people away and denying them their right to have someone who loves them be by their side to protect and love them while sick and suffering in an American healthcare facility. It is like the American Holocaust in certain regards. Okay, millions died all alone in isolation. Millions. Millions. Think about it. God forbid someone in your family gets in an accident. Okay, your daughter, your granddaughter, your son, someone, and you're denied your right, and your daughter or family member's right to have you by their side to pray for them, hold their hand, protect them, love them, encourage them, and in order to give them and even take care of them when the staff is too busy, and then prevent medical mistakes. Make sure the medical wishes are being. You can't do that with Zoom. Okay, the IV pops out, the patient falls out of bed, the patient's on their back and they start throwing up. How many times I walk in a room and the patient's throwing up, and I go and get somebody and they literally save their life. Otherwise, they choke or aspirate and they would die. And then what happened? I was locked out. Me and Pastor Ken, who's 80 years old, were all locked out. I fought for a year, night and day, to reopen them doors, put everything on the line. Now I have a huge amount of credit card debt that I'm dealing with. Why? Because I did the right thing. I place service above self and reaching out and helping others for the glory of God. Just like your father, just like your uncle, and many other Kennedys have done, including you. Placing service above self and reaching out and helping others for the glory of God. Okay, that's a Unico. Placing service above self is a Unico model. Unico is an Italian American organization back east. I'm from Stamford, Connecticut. My father, Paul Sr., was high up in the Democratic Party. He was instrumental in putting Italian Americans into office, congressmen, judges, elected officials. He was sat on the board of directors of the Italian Center, played a role in having President Nixon come in and dedicate that building on Columbus Day, 1970. My dad started 11 chapters, the state of Connecticut, for mental health reform. He also was instrumental in formulating a mental health wing in the Stanford Hospital. He was elected Justice of the Peace, ran for mayor, and did many other things. Was Fair Rent Commissioner, and did many other things to help improve this country. And he died broke. He died broke out here in Arizona because of a corrupt healthcare system. I watched as my parents' life savings went right down the toilet because of prescription drug and medical bills. And for 4 years, my family went through a living hell. We almost lost our family home, which was all we had left by the time my parents died. And Medicare Recovery tried to take that because my mom was on Arizona long-term care for Altex, it's called, for 4 years. And because my dad died first and then my mom died, guess what? Now, if the house goes into probate, Medicare Recovery can swoop in and take every nickel. And it took a lot of maneuvering, but we were able to at least save our home. Senator Tom Arkin was against Medicare Recovery unless it's blatant fraud. You own 3, 4 houses, and it's blatant fraud, then you go after them. But if you're looking at a single home that it took decades to pay off, that house is to go to the children and grandchildren, then the government has no right to come in and strip that away from a family that just went through 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, a living hell taking care of their parents who are wasting away and dying. That's what happened to my family. And so that's why I became a healthcare activist. I was known as the Democratic Kid on talk radio and going out and protesting. I protested with the Alliance for Retired Americans, fighting for the preservation of Social Security and Medicare, and went out and protested when George Bush came down here, Jr., because his Medicare prescription drug bill was a ripoff and a sham. It put millions into the pockets of the people making the cards and the pharmaceutical companies, and gave our seniors a piss poor discount card, which the first year saved them about 80%. But every year, pharmaceuticals, as you know, go up 80, 90, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500%. So by the second year, you're breaking even. By the third year, you're behind the 8 ball. And then Governor Napolitano, who I met, she started the Copper State Gold Card, and what that is, they didn't give her a nickel to do it. She did it on her own, and the deal is for $1 you could get a discount card with participating pharmacies here in Arizona for a discount for your pharmaceuticals. But here's the deal: Medicare recovery is illegal. It's double taxation. It is a benefit that's given to people when they're sick, and then they try to take everything you own through probate. Nowadays, they even make you take your house if it's in a trust. They make you take it out of the trust, just so they could have their hooks in it when our parents die. So, these are some of the things that I've been involved with. I got the whole COVID unit shut down in the facility where I served because it was out of compliance for 3 months. They were supposed to allow visits to the patients, clergy, and family. We're supposed to have visits for 3 months. It was out of compliance. I found out about it. I put my foot down and got the whole COVID unit shut down, and I got visits for those poor people. All right. I'm doing my part. Okay. I'm doing my part, putting everything on the line for what's right, engaging our elected officials who basically, it's in one ear and out the other, but at least I try. I'm going into these facilities. I'm trying to bring joy and love to these poor people, but it's about time our elected officials stepped up, crafted real laws to protect these people, held these facilities accountable. And here's what my elected officials, some of them, well, what happens if you go in there and shut these places down? Where are the patients going to go? Well, here's what you do. You have empty buildings in every city in the nation. So what do? You make them into makeshift long-term care facilities. You put your foot down and you craft real laws that protect these people. You hold government agencies accountable. You fire, arrest, prosecute these department heads that clearly dropped the ball, and staff and owners of these facilities. You drag them into court. And then you shut down these places one at a time. You move the patients into these makeshift facilities to be for you know I want to say evaluation. All right, and the idea it's temporary, and then you find them a bed in another facility, and you rotate them out. Then you go after the next facility, shut it down, put the patients in these makeshift facilities, evaluate them, classify them, and then ship them out. Who's going to staff these makeshift facilities? The National Guard and the Red Cross, if you can't get people to do it. Retired nurses, healthcare workers that are screened. You get people from the church, different churches. You could get volunteers to go in and serve our Lord by helping to bring peace and comfort and joy and safety and good medical care to these people. And as soon as you start shutting down 3, 4, 5 facilities, the rest will fall in line. Not let's protect mom and pop so that they can have their slave ship long-term care facility running at full capacity and have these poor people waste away and die like animals. So that's my video. It's probably going to go nowhere. If you see it, again, I'll put all the information below. The videos with the attorney, the audit general, and the different materials that I have, and uh, uh, the hearings, one of the hearings that I spoke at. And have a blessed day. I wish you well. We're in the same boat, just a different part of the boat. I'm in steerage, and you're up in the captain's chair, but that's okay. I wish you well. Have a blessed day, and remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I.